The next few days at Ridgewood Academy didn't get any easier for Ethan and Elijah. Brandon seemed to enjoy picking on them more than ever, finding new ways to embarrass them in front of their classmates. During history class, he leaned over and whispered loudly enough for others to hear, "Hey cartoon nerds, why don't you draw something funny about me? Oh wait, you probably can't even spell my name right." His friends snickered, and Ethan felt his face grow hot with shame. Elijah tried to ignore the comment, but his hands trembled as he scribbled in his notebook, pretending to focus on the lesson. At lunch, things were no better. The twins sat alone at their usual corner table, eating quietly while Brandon and his crew strutted past, throwing insults over their shoulders. "Nice glasses, Four Eyes," one of them called out, pointing at Ethan. Another chimed in, "Yeah, maybe if you squint hard enough, you'll see how lame you are." Ethan clenched his jaw, staring down at his tray so he wouldn't have to meet anyone's eyes. Elijah forced a weak smile, trying to act like none of it bothered him, but inside, he felt a storm brewing. He hated feeling powerless, hated that they couldn't fight back, or at least not yet. One afternoon, after another long day of enduring taunts and pranks, the twins trudged home together. Their mom greeted them warmly, asking how school had been. "It was fine," Elijah lied quickly, avoiding her gaze. Ethan stayed silent, shrugging off his backpack and heading straight to their room. Once inside, they closed the door behind them and slumped onto their beds, exhausted. "We can't keep letting him do this," Ethan said suddenly, breaking the silence. His voice was low but firm, filled with frustration. "Every day it gets worse. What if we just told someone?" "Like who?" Elijah asked, sitting up. "Mom? Dad? They'd go to the principal, and then what? It would make things 10 times worse. Brandon would never stop." Ethan sighed, knowing his brother was right. Telling an adult might only escalate the situation. Ridgewood Academy wasn't like their old school. Here, kids like Brandon thrived on drama and attention. Reporting him would only paint a bigger target on their backs. As if sensing his twins' despair, Elijah reached under his bed and pulled out the box they'd found in the storage room. "Maybe there's another way," he said thoughtfully. "Remember what Grandpa wrote in that letter about standing up for ourselves?" Ethan frowned. "You think we should start practicing again? Like, actually use those moves?" "Why not?" Elijah replied, flipping through one of the training manuals. "We already know some of it. We just need to practice until we remember everything." That night, after their parents went to bed, the twins snuck downstairs into the living room. They cleared a small space near the couch and began going through the motions they vaguely remembered from their childhood summers with their grandfather. At first, it felt awkward. Their punches lacked power, and their kicks were clumsy. But slowly, muscle memory kicked in. Each movement became smoother, more natural. By the time they finished, both boys were breathing heavily, sweat dripping down their foreheads. "This feels kind of good," Ethan admitted, wiping his face with the sleeve of his shirt. "I forgot how strong I used to feel when we did this stuff." "Me too," Elijah agreed, grinning. "Imagine if we could really show Brandon what we're capable of." But before they could continue their late-night training sessions, something unexpected happened. A girl named Mia Lopez noticed the twins during lunch one day. She was quiet and observant, often sitting alone with a book or sketch pad. Unlike most students at Ridgewood, she didn't seem interested in cliques or gossip. When she saw Ethan and Elijah huddled together at their table, looking defeated, she decided to approach them. "Hey," she said softly, sliding into the seat across from them. "You guys okay?" Ethan glanced up, surprised. Yeah. Why?" Mia shrugged. "Just seems like you've been having a rough time lately. Everyone knows Brandon's been messing with you." Elijah stiffened. "It's nothing. We're handling it." Mia tilted her head, studying them closely. "If you say so, but if you ever need help, let me know. I've dealt with bullies before." Her words caught their attention. "What do you mean?" Ethan asked cautiously. "I take Taekwondo," Mia explained. "It helps me stay calm when people try to push me around. Plus, it's empowering. You should try it sometime." The twins, exchanged glances, unsure how to respond. They hadn't told anyone about their secret training, not even Mia, but her offer intrigued them. Maybe she could teach them more than they'd learned from their grandfather's manuals. Later that week, Mia invited them to join her at the local community center where she practiced. Reluctantly, Ethan and Elena agreed. When they arrived, they were greeted by the sound of feet hitting mats and instructors calling out commands. The energy in the room was electric, and for the first time in weeks, the twins felt a spark of excitement. Mia introduced them to her instructor, a kind woman named Mrs. Patel, who welcomed them warmly. "So, you want to learn self-defense?" she asked, smiling. "Good choice, let's start with the basics." For the next hour, the twins followed along as Mia and Mrs. Patel guided them through simple exercises, stances, blocks, and basic strikes. To their surprise, many of the techniques felt familiar, almost instinctual. By the end of the session, both boys were sweating but smiling, feeling stronger and more confident than they had in months. On their walk home, Elijah turned to Mia. "Thanks for bringing us here. This is amazing." "No problem," Mia replied, grinning. "You two have potential. Keep practicing and you'll be unstoppable." Unstoppable. The word echoed in their minds as they climbed the stairs to their room that night. For the first time since starting at Ridgewood Academy, Ethan and Elijah felt like they had a weapon against Brandon. Not just physical strength, but the courage to stand up for themselves. Meanwhile, Brandon had grown tired of his usual games. He wanted to break the twins completely, to prove once and for all that they didn't belong at Ridgewood. One morning, he cornered them in the hallway before class, his smug grin wider than ever. "All right, losers," he sneered. "Here's the deal. If you don't hand over your lunch money every day for the rest of the month, I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly how pathetic you are. Got it?" Ethan froze, panic rising in his chest. Elijah stepped forward, his voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside him. "Leave us alone, Brandon. Or else." Brandon laughed, leaning closer. "Or else what? You gonna cry? Run home to mommy?" Elijah didn't respond. Instead, he locked eyes with Brandon, his expression unreadable. For a moment, Brandon hesitated, unsure what to make of the sudden change in demeanor. Then he shook it off, waving dismissively as he walked away. Back in their room that evening, Ethan turned to his brother. "Do you think we're ready? To face him, I mean." Elijah nodded slowly. "We won't know unless we try. And besides," he grinned, holding up one of their grandfather's training manuals. "We've got this." As the days passed, the twins continued practicing, honing their skills under Mia's guidance. They learned discipline, patience, and control, not just in martial arts, but in life. They started walking taller, speaking up more in class, and refusing to let Brandon's taunts bring them down. They weren't the same scared boys who had walked through Ridgewood's gates on their first day. Something inside them had shifted, awakened, and deep down they knew it was only a matter of time before Brandon realized it too. The days at Ridgewood Academy began to feel different for Ethan and Elijah. The twins no longer slouched in their seats or avoided eye contact when Brandon and his crew passed by. Instead, they held their heads high, moving with a quiet confidence. That surprised even themselves. Their classmates noticed the change too, though no one could quite put their finger on what was different about the Carter brothers. Mia watched them closely during lunch, smiling whenever she caught them practicing subtle stances under the table or adjusting their posture to mimic the forms they'd learned in Taekwondo class. Mia became more than just a guide. She became a friend. She often joined the twins after school, helping them refine their techniques and teaching them strategies to stay calm under pressure. "It's not just about fighting," she reminded them one afternoon as they sparred lightly in the community center gym. "It's about knowing when to act and when to walk away. You can't let anger take over." Ethan nodded, catching his breath after dodging a swift kick from Elijah. "I get it, but what if Brandon doesn't give us a choice?" Mia paused, her expression thoughtful. "Then you show him that you're not afraid. Not because you want to hurt him, but because you've got nothing to prove." Her words stuck with the twins long after practice ended. They spent hours talking about how they would handle the inevitable confrontation with Brandon. Both boys agreed. They wouldn't start anything, but if Brandon pushed too far, they wouldn't back down either. For the first time, they felt prepared, not just physically, but mentally. At school, Brandon grew increasingly frustrated. He couldn't understand why the twins weren't crumbling under his constant teasing. Normally, kids like them would crumble after a week of his antics, but Ethan and Elijah seemed different now. It annoyed him. One morning, during science class, he decided to up the stakes. While Mr. Thompson wrote equations on the board, Brandon leaned over and snatched Elijah's notebook right out of his hands. "Hey!" Elijah protested, reaching for it. Brandon smirked, flipping through the pages. "What's this? More of your little comic book drawings? How cute." He tore out a page and crumpled it into a ball, tossing it onto the floor. Then he ripped another, laughing as he did so. A few students giggled nervously while others looked away, uncomfortable. Elijah's fists clenched, but he forced himself to stay seated. Beside him, Ethan whispered, "Don't react. Not here." "I'm trying," Elijah muttered through gritted teeth. By the end of the period, most of Elijah's sketches were ruined. As the bell rang, Brandon sauntered off with his friends, leaving the twins fuming. Back in their room that evening, Elijah stared at the torn pages scattered across his bed. Each drawing represented weeks of work, late nights spent perfecting every detail. Seeing them destroyed made his chest ache with anger and sadness. "We should do something," Elijah said finally, breaking the silence. His voice was low but intense. "We can't keep letting him win." Ethan hesitated. "But what? We can't fight him here. We'll get in trouble." "Not fight," Elijah corrected. "Stand up to him. Show him we're not scared anymore." The next day, rumors spread like wildfire through Ridgewood Academy. Someone had seen two shadowy figures sneaking into the school gymnasium late at night, practicing martial arts moves with incredible skill. At first, no one believed it, until Mia accidentally let slip that she'd been helping the twins train. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know more. Were Ethan and Elijah really learning how to fight? Could they actually stand up to Brandon? Brandon heard the whispers and scoffed. "Yeah, right," he told his friends during lunch. "Those losers couldn't throw a punch if their lives depended on it." But deep down, he wasn't so sure. Something about the way the twins carried themselves lately unsettled him. They didn't flinch when he glared at them in the hallways. They didn't shrink away when he called them names. And worst of all, they didn't seem to care what anyone thought anymore. One Friday afternoon, Brandon decided to test them. He cornered the twins near the lockers after school. His usual smug grin plastered across his face. "All right, twerps," he said, stepping closer. "I've heard some interesting things about you two. People say you've been training to fight. Is that true?" Ethan and Elijah exchanged a glance. Neither of them answered. Brandon laughed, shaking his head. "You guys are hilarious. You really think you can take me?" Elijah stepped forward, meeting Brandon's gaze directly. "We don't want any trouble, Brandon. Just leave us alone." "Or what?" Brandon challenged, his voice rising. "You gonna cry again? Run home to mommy?" Without warning, Elijah moved faster than anyone expected. In a single fluid motion, he sidestepped Brandon's attempt to shove him and delivered a sharp tap to the older boy's shoulder. It wasn't meant to hurt. It was a demonstration, a reminder that he could have done much worse if he'd wanted to. Brandon stumbled back, shocked, his eyes wide with disbelief. "What the—" he stammered, staring at Elijah. "Did you just back off?" Elijah said calmly, his tone firm. "We're done playing your games." For a moment, Brandon looked like he might retaliate, but then he glanced around, noticing the small crowd that had gathered to watch. Several students were whispering, pointing at him. He straightened up, brushing imaginary dirt off his shirt. "Whatever," he muttered, backing away. "This isn't over." As he walked off, Ethan turned to his brother, his heart pounding. "That was insane. Did you see his face?" Elijah grinned, adrenaline coursing through him. Told you we could handle it. Word of the encounter spread quickly. By Monday morning, nearly everyone at Ridgewood knew that Ethan and Elijah had stood up to Brandon and won. Some students cheered for the twins, impressed by their bravery. Others whispered behind their backs, wondering if they'd gone too far. Even Principal Harper heard about it and called the twins into her office. "Is it true?" she asked, folding her hands on her desk. "Did you threaten or harm another student?" "No, ma'am," Ethan replied honestly. "We didn't touch him. We just stood up for ourselves." Principal Harper studied them for a moment before nodding. "Very well. I trust you'll continue to conduct yourselves appropriately." Dismissed. Outside the office, Mia waited for them, beaming. "You did it. You showed him who you are." Ethan smiled shyly while Elijah chuckled. "Feels good, doesn't it?" "It does," Ethan admitted. "But what happens next? What if Brandon tries something else?" "He will," Mia said matter-of-factly. "But you're ready. Remember what I told you, stay calm, stay strong, and don't let him get inside your head." True to Mia's prediction, Brandon didn't give up easily. Over the next few days, he tried everything he could think of to regain control. He spread lies about the twins, accusing them of starting fights and threatening other students. When that didn't work, he enlisted his friends to follow them around, hoping to intimidate them into submission. But none of it worked. Every time Brandon tried to provoke them, the twins responded with calm indifference, refusing to rise to the bait. Their newfound strength inspired others too. Slowly but surely, students who had once ignored or mocked Ethan and Elijah began reaching out to them. A boy named Lucas, who had always been too shy to speak up, thanked them for standing up to Brandon. A girl named Sophie started sitting with them at lunch, sharing stories about how she'd dealt with bullies in her old school. Even teachers noticed the shift, praising the twins for their resilience and leadership. Despite the positive changes, Ethan and Elijah knew the battle wasn't over. Brandon Hayes wasn't someone who gave up easily, and they suspected he was planning something big. Late one night, as they practiced together in the dim light of their bedroom, Elijah voiced his concerns. "He's not going to stop," he said, pausing mid-kick. "He'll find a way to make us look bad." "Maybe," Ethan replied, catching his breath. "But we're ready. No matter what he does, we'll handle it. Together." Elijah nodded, determination shining in his eyes. Together. And so, the twins continued preparing, knowing that the real test was still ahead. But for the first time in months, they faced the future without fear. They had each other, their training, and the unwavering belief that they could overcome anything life threw their way. Whatever came next, they would face it head-on, as warriors, as brothers, and as the heroes of their own story. The tension between Brandon and the twins reached a boiling point. It was clear that he couldn't let things go, not after being humiliated in front of his friends and classmates. Every day, Ethan and Elijah could feel his eyes on them, watching, waiting for an opportunity to strike back. The whispers around school grew louder as rumors swirled about what Brandon might do next. Some students thought he'd challenge the twins to a fight. Others believed he'd try to sabotage them academically or socially. No one knew for sure, but everyone agreed that something big was coming. One afternoon during gym class, Brandon made his move. He sauntered over to the twins while they were tying their sneakers, his usual smirk firmly in place. "All right, nerds," he said loudly enough for the entire class to hear. "Let's settle this once and for all. After school today, meet me in the parking lot. We're going to have ourselves a little discussion." Ethan froze, his hands trembling slightly as he tied his laces. Elijah glanced at his brother before turning to Brandon with a calm expression. "What kind of discussion?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "You know exactly what I mean," Brandon replied, leaning closer. "A fight, just you two against me. If you've got guts, you'll show up. If not..." He shrugged, letting the threat hang in the air. The gym fell silent as everyone turned to watch the exchange. Ethan felt his stomach churn with nerves, but Elijah stood tall, his voice steady. Fine, we'll be there. Brandon raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by how quickly they agreed. Don't chicken out, he warned before walking away, his cronies trailing behind him. As soon as gym class ended, the twins found themselves surrounded by curious classmates eager to learn more. Are you really going to fight him? One boy asked wide-eyed. What are you going to do? Another chimed in. Ethan and Elijah exchanged a glance before Elijah spoke up. We're not looking for trouble, but we won't run from it either. Mia appeared moments later, pushing her way through the crowd. You can't seriously be considering this, she said, her tone sharp with concern. Brandon's bigger than both of you combined. This isn't just about standing up for yourselves. It's dangerous. We don't have a choice, Ethan replied quietly. If we back down now, he'll never stop. Mia sighed, shaking her head. Then promise me one thing. You won't lose control. Stick to what we've practiced. Stay disciplined. The twins nodded, grateful for her support. For the rest of the day, they tried to focus on their classes, but their minds kept drifting to the upcoming confrontation. During lunch, they sat together in silence, sketching aimlessly in their notebooks. Even Mia's attempts to distract them with jokes fell flat. After school, the twins changed into comfortable clothes and headed toward the parking lot. A large group of students had already gathered, buzzing with excitement and anticipation. Brandon stood near the center, flanked by his usual crew. His confident grin faltered slightly when he saw the determined looks on Ethan and Elijah's faces. Glad you showed up, Brandon said, cracking his knuckles. Didn't think you'd actually have the guts. Elijah stepped forward, his stance relaxed but ready. Let's get this over with. Without warning, Brandon lunged at Elijah, aiming a punch at his face. But Elijah ducked smoothly, countering with a swift kick to Brandon's side. The older boy stumbled back, shocked by the speed and precision of the move. Before he could recover, Ethan stepped in, delivering a calculated strike to Brandon's arm that sent him reeling. The crowd gasped, murmuring in disbelief. No one had expected the twins to hold their own so well. Brandon's friends hesitated, unsure whether to intervene. Seeing their leader struggling ignited something in the twins. They moved in perfect sync, using every technique they'd learned in training. When Brandon tried to tackle Elijah, Ethan blocked him with a firm sweep of his leg. When Brandon aimed a kick at Ethan, Elijah intercepted it with ease. Within minutes, Brandon was on the ground, breathing heavily and glaring up at the twins. This isn't fair, he shouted, his voice tinged with desperation. You cheated. No one cheated, Elijah said calmly, offering a hand to help him up. Brandon slapped it away, scrambling to his feet instead. He looked around at the crowd, searching for support, but found only stunned faces. Defeated and embarrassed, Brandon stormed off, his friends trailing after him. The parking lot erupted into cheers as students rushed forward to congratulate the twins. That was incredible, Lucas exclaimed, clapping Ethan on the back. I've never seen anything like it. Sophie hugged Elijah tightly, tears shining in her eyes. Thank you for showing us that we don't have to put up with bullies. Even Principal Harper arrived, having heard the commotion. She didn't scold the twins. Instead, she praised them for handling the situation without resorting to unnecessary violence. You've set an example for everyone here, she said, her voice filled with admiration. Well done. Later that evening, Ethan and Elijah sat in their room, replaying the events of the day in their minds. They felt proud of themselves, not because they'd beaten Brandon, but because they'd proven that strength wasn't about aggression or dominance. It was about knowing who you were and refusing to let anyone take that away from you. I can't believe we did it, Ethan said, finally breaking the silence. Me neither, Elijah replied, smiling. But I'm glad we did. Their victory changed the atmosphere at Ridgewood Academy almost overnight. Students who had once avoided the twins now sought them out, eager to befriend them. Teachers praised their resilience and leadership, and even parents began mentioning the twins' story as an example of courage and determination. Ethan and Elijah became role models, inspiring others to stand up for themselves and each other. But perhaps the most surprising change came from Brandon himself. Days after the fight, he approached the twins during lunch, his usual arrogance replaced by genuine remorse. "Look, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry," he mumbled, avoiding their eyes. "I was wrong about you guys. You didn't deserve any of the stuff I did." Ethan and Elijah exchanged a glance before Elijah spoke. "Apology accepted, just don't make it a habit." Brandon managed a weak smile. "Deal." Though forgiveness didn't come easily, the twins chose to give Brandon a second chance. Over time, they noticed small changes in him, less cruelty, more kindness. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As the weeks passed, life at Ridgewood settled into a new rhythm. Ethan and Elijah continued practicing martial arts, not just for self-defense but as a way to honor their grandfather's legacy. They stayed close with Mia, who remained a constant source of encouragement and wisdom. And most importantly, they carried themselves with the same quiet confidence that had helped them overcome their greatest challenge yet. For the first time since starting at Ridgewood Academy, Ethan and Elijah truly belonged. They weren't just survivors, they were leaders, heroes in their own right. And as they walked home together one crisp autumn afternoon, laughing about a comic strip idea Elijah had come up with, they knew they'd found their place in the world. The weeks that followed the showdown in the parking lot brought a new sense of peace to Ridgewood Academy. The bullying that had once been a daily struggle faded into memory, replaced by a culture of respect and kindness. Students who had previously feared speaking up began standing against injustice when they saw it. Teachers noticed a shift too. Classrooms felt lighter, more collaborative, as if the entire school had taken a deep breath after years of holding it in. Ethan and Elijah became symbols of hope for their peers. Their story spread beyond Ridgewood's walls, inspiring others through word of mouth and even a feature article in the school newspaper. Written by Sophie, the piece highlighted how the twins had transformed not only their own lives, but also the atmosphere of the school. "They taught us that strength isn't about being tough," Sophie wrote. "It's about believing in yourself and protecting what matters." Despite their newfound fame, Ethan and Elijah stayed humble. They continued attending taekwondo classes with Mia, honing their skills and learning new techniques. Each session was a reminder of how far they'd come, from awkward beginners rediscovering forgotten lessons to confident martial artists capable of handling any challenge. Mrs. Patel often praised them for their dedication, telling other students, "These boys are proof that hard work pays off." Mia grew closer to the twins as well, becoming an integral part of their journey. She introduced them to meditation exercises to help manage stress and encouraged them to use their voices outside of combat. "Being strong isn't just physical," she reminded them during one practice. "It's mental and emotional too. You've got so much power, you just need to know how to use it." Inspired by her words, the twins decided to share their experience with others. With Mia's help, they organized a self-defense workshop for students who felt vulnerable or intimidated. On the day of the event, dozens of kids showed up, eager to learn. Ethan and Elijah started with basic moves, demonstrating stances and blocks while explaining the importance of staying calm under pressure. By the end of the session, many participants left feeling empowered, thanking the twins for giving them tools to protect themselves. One student, a shy girl named Lily, approached them afterward. "I used to be scared all the time," she admitted softly, "but now I feel like I can handle anything. Thank you." Her gratitude touched Ethan deeply. "We were just like you once," he said gently. "If we can do it, so can you." As the semester progressed, Brandon kept his promise to change. Though he still struggled with his old habits, he made an effort to treat others with respect. He stopped teasing classmates and even apologized to several students he'd bullied in the past. While some remained wary of him, others welcomed his transformation. Seeing this, Ethan and Elijah realized that forgiveness wasn't just about letting go. It was about giving people a chance to grow. Brandon occasionally joined the twins and Mia during lunch, sitting quietly at the edge of their table. At first, the conversations were awkward, but over time, they found common ground. One afternoon, as they discussed an upcoming science project, Brandon surprised everyone by offering to collaborate. "I'm better at math than most people think," he admitted sheepishly. "Maybe I could help?" "Sure," Elijah replied, smiling. "Why not?" Their partnership turned out to be a success, earning them high marks and praise from their teacher. For Brandon, it was a turning point, a chance to prove that he could contribute positively. Slowly but surely, he began rebuilding trust, both with others and within himself. By winter break, Ridgewood Academy felt like a different place. The hallways buzzed with laughter instead of whispers, and friendships formed across cliques that had once seemed impenetrable. Even Principal Harper noticed the shift, mentioning it during a school assembly. "This year has shown us the power of courage and compassion," she said, her voice warm with pride. "Let's carry these values forward as we move into the new year." For Ethan and Elijah, the holidays were a time to reflect on everything they'd accomplished. Back home, they spent hours sketching new comic book ideas, drawing inspiration from their experiences. Their hero characters weren't invincible. They faced struggles, made mistakes, and relied on teamwork to overcome obstacles. It was a reflection of their own journey, one they hoped would resonate with readers someday. On Christmas morning, the twins woke up to find a small package waiting for them under the tree. Inside was a framed photo of their grandfather, along with a note from their parents. "We're so proud of who you've become. Never forget where your strength comes from." Tears welled in Elijah's eyes as he read the message aloud. "He'd be proud of us, wouldn't he?" he asked, looking at Ethan. Ethan nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "Yeah, I think he would." When they returned to school in January, the twins carried that pride with them. They continued mentoring younger students, leading workshops, and advocating for kindness. Their influence extended beyond Ridgewood, reaching local community centers and youth programs. People began referring to them as the Carter Brothers, a title that filled them with a quiet sense of accomplishment. One evening, as they practiced together in the gym, Mia paused mid-kick to smile at them. "You know, you've changed the world around here," she said. "Not many people can say that." "We didn't do it alone," Elijah replied, brushing sweat from his forehead. "You helped us every step of the way." "And so did Grandpa," Ethan added. "Without him, none of this would have happened." Mia nodded, her expression thoughtful. "Still, don't underestimate the impact you've had. You've shown everyone that it's possible to rise above fear and hate. That's something worth celebrating." As spring approached, Ridgewood prepared for its annual talent show. Encouraged by Mia and their classmates, Ethan and Elijah decided to participate, not with martial arts demonstrations, but with a presentation of their comics. Standing on stage, they shared their creations with the audience, explaining how each character represented a lesson they'd learned along the way. When they finished, the auditorium erupted into applause, louder than either twin had expected. Afterward, a group of students surrounded them, asking questions and complimenting their work. Among them was Brandon, who grinned and gave them a thumbs up. "That was awesome," he said sincerely. "You guys should totally publish those comics." "Maybe we will," Elijah replied, exchanging a glance with Ethan. The idea hadn't occurred to them before, but now it seemed like a real possibility. By the end of the school year, Ethan and Elijah had achieved more than they ever imagined. They'd gone from being bullied outsiders to respected leaders, proving that true strength came from within. Their story served as a reminder that adversity could be transformed into opportunity, if you had the courage to face it head-on. As they walked across the stage at graduation, Ethan and Elijah held their heads high, knowing they'd earned their place among Ridgewood's finest. Their parents cheered from the crowd, tears streaming down their faces. Even Mia, sitting nearby, wiped her eyes, beaming with pride. That summer, the twins began working on publishing their comics, determined to inspire others the way they'd been inspired. They dedicated the first issue to their grandfather, writing, "In the introduction, to Grandpa, thank you for teaching us that strength isn't about fighting, it's about standing up for what's right. Years later, when asked about their time at Ridgewood Academy, Ethan and Elijah always smiled. It wasn't easy, they'd say, but it made us who we are today. And who were they? Warriors, brothers, and heroes, not because of what they'd done, but because of who they chose to be. Ethan and Elijah Carter were twins who looked so much alike that even their parents sometimes mixed them up. They had dark brown skin, short curly hair, and matching pairs of thick glasses perched on their noses. The only real way to tell them apart was by their personalities. Ethan was quieter, preferring to keep his thoughts to himself, while Elijah liked to talk and crack jokes whenever he could. Despite their differences, they shared a love for drawing comics in their notebooks, during class or at home. Their favorite superheroes weren't the ones you saw in movies. They made up their own characters, sketching heroes with incredible powers and wild adventures. Their family had recently moved from a small town to the big city because their mom got a new job as an accountant at a large firm. With the move came a chance for Ethan and Elijah to attend Ridgewood Academy, one of the most prestigious private schools in the area. Their parents were thrilled about this opportunity. They believed it would give their sons a better education and open doors for their future. But Ethan and Elijah weren't so sure. Leaving behind everything familiar, their old school, their friends, and the quiet life they knew, felt overwhelming. On their first day at Ridgewood Academy, the twins walked through the grand iron gates, feeling nervous. The campus was beautiful, with tall brick buildings surrounded by perfectly trimmed lawns and flower gardens. Students chatted excitedly in groups, dressed in crisp uniforms that looked expensive. Ethan and Elijah stood out immediately, not just because they were new, but also because their clothes didn't quite fit right. Their uniforms were second-hand, slightly worn, and not tailored like everyone else's. It wasn't something they thought anyone would notice, but people did. As they entered their homeroom, all eyes turned toward them. A boy sitting near the front snickered loudly enough for others to hear. "Look at these two," he said, pointing at the twins. "Did they get lost on their way to middle school?" The comment made some students laugh while others pretended not to notice. Ethan felt his cheeks burning, but he kept his head down, clutching his backpack tightly. Elijah forced a weak smile, trying to play it cool, though inside he felt just as embarrassed. The boy who had spoken was Brandon Hayes, a name that would soon become infamous to Ethan and Elijah. He was tall for his age, with sandy blonde hair and a confident smirk that seemed permanently etched onto his face. Brandon ruled the school without question, leading a group of followers who hung on his every word. His favorite pastime was making fun of anyone who didn't fit in, especially newcomers like the Carter twins. Throughout the day, Brandon found ways to make their lives miserable. During math class, he flicked paper balls at the back of Ethan's head when the teacher wasn't looking. In science, he accidentally spilled water on Elijah's notebook, ruining the pages of a comic strip Ethan had drawn. By lunchtime, the twins were exhausted, both physically and emotionally. They sat together at a corner table, picking at their food in silence. "You okay?" Elijah asked softly, nudging his brother's arm. Ethan shrugged, staring down at his tray. "I guess, just why does he have to be such a jerk?" Elijah sighed. "I don't know. Maybe he's just jealous." "Jealous of what?" "Our awesome fashion sense," Ethan joked half-heartedly, gesturing to their mismatched uniforms. Elijah chuckled despite himself. That was one thing about having a twin. They always knew how to lift each other's spirits, even if only for a moment. Later that afternoon, things got worse. As they headed to gym class, Brandon and his friends blocked their path in the hallway. "Hey, Nerd Patrol," Brandon sneered. "Where do you think you're going?" "To class," Elijah replied, trying to sound brave. "We're gonna be late," Brandon smirked. "Late? Oh no, wouldn't want that." He stepped closer, towering over the twins. "You know, you two are kind of weird. I mean, who wears hand-me-down uniforms to a place like this?" His friends laughed, egging him on. Ethan clenched his fists, anger bubbling inside him. He wanted to say something, anything to shut Brandon up, but words failed him. Instead, he glanced at Elijah, silently pleading for help. "Leave us alone," Elijah finally said, his voice steady despite the fear creeping into his chest. Brandon raised an eyebrow. Or what? You gonna cry to your mommy? Before either twin could respond, the bell rang, signaling the start of the next period. Brandon backed off, laughing as he walked away with his crew. Ethan let out a shaky breath, his heart pounding. Elijah patted his shoulder reassuringly, though he felt just as shaken. After school, the twins trudged home in silence. Their mom greeted them at the door with a bright smile, asking how their first day went. Ethan mumbled something vague about being tired, while Elijah lied and said it was fine. Neither of them wanted to worry her. Upstairs in their shared bedroom, Ethan flopped onto his bed, staring at the ceiling. "This place is terrible," he muttered. "Why couldn't we stay in our old school?" "I know," Elijah agreed, sitting cross-legged on his own bed. "But maybe it'll get better. We just need to lay low and not draw attention to ourselves." "Yeah, good luck with that," Ethan said bitterly. A few days later, while exploring the school during a free period, the twins stumbled upon an old storage room hidden behind a heavy wooden door. Curious, they pushed it open and stepped inside. The room smelled musty, filled with dusty shelves stacked with forgotten textbooks and supplies. Near the back, they found a cardboard box labeled Carter Family. Puzzled, they opened it to discover a collection of photographs, certificates, and training manuals belonging to their late grandfather. Among the items was a faded letter addressed to them. Written in neat cursive, it read, "Dear Ethan and Elijah. If you're reading this, then it means I'm no longer there to guide you. But remember this, the lessons I taught you are stronger than any bully or challenge you might face. Strength isn't just about fighting, it's about knowing yourself and standing up for what's right. Never forget that. Love always, Grandpa." The twins stared at the letter in silence, memories flooding back. They remembered summers spent visiting their grandfather's house, where he'd wake them early every morning to practice karate in the backyard. At the time, they thought it was just another chore, like brushing their teeth or doing homework. But now, holding those old training manuals in their hands, they realized it had been something more. "We should try practicing again," Elijah suggested hesitantly, "just to see if we still remember." Ethan nodded slowly. "Maybe, but not here. Somewhere nobody can see us." Little did they know, rediscovering their martial arts skills would change everything, for themselves and for Ridgewood Academy.